This is just a just commentary on Daniel Latta's video about Satanism, which I think is good. Just to add a few points. I'm just using this painting I picked, this picture I painted as a backdrop for this. I fell in love with the Satanic Bible when I first picked it up, and I turned to page 101. Just on, I just opened it, and it happened to fall on 101, and I read what he wrote there. And then I bought it, and then I read it, and then I read it again, and then I read it again. LaVey, he was being provocative and adversarial, and he was a lion tamer, and he was all about the circus and showman. And, that's what the big thing was, the rituals in the 60s and the 70s. And it basically was Ayn Rand's philosophy, but with the idea that mankind needs religion and ritual, right? But he even goes past that and says, nowadays, since it's so hip to be anti-patriotic and the hippies are in full swing in Eastern mysticism, he says the new Satanist would be ultra-patriotic, despise Eastern mysticism, and possibly even uphold the church. Now you can see how Eastern Orthodoxy fits right into that, right? The problem is that anybody who tries to be a Satanist, and I would say Islam is satanic in the fact that its commands are do the opposite of what the kafir does, and so it is looking at the Byzantine form of Christianity and trying to invert it, right? It does go after, even though the Quran praises the Torah and the Gospels, modern day Sunnism goes after them with a vengeance, and it certainly goes after every other religions, adversarial to capitalism, communism, Hinduism, Buddhism, humanism, Taoism, Christianity, Judaism, and it spread warfare. So it would be the true form of it, but we're talking about modern Satanism. It was basically kind of like a joke, kind of like how the comedian acts in The Watchmen. Basically, to put a mirror up to society, or even just to flaunt it. Satanists weren't hippies. But the funny thing I find about the occultists lately, like, it's so funny. They get all their stuff from the medieval Roman Catholic and Protestant misunderstandings of ancient religions. Hermes Trismegistus, the Rosicrucians, all these grimoires and all this stuff. And then they try to say, oh, the Gnostics, they were, as if Gnostics were Satanists, as if they didn't call themselves Christians, believe in Christ, and follow Paul. The only non-Pauline or non-Christian Gnostics are the modern-day Mandaeans, and they appeared extremely late. But Valentinus, Basilidius, hell, even Marcion and Arius, and well, those last two weren't Arians, or weren't Gnostics. The people that the church opposed were the heretics, right? I mean, if you look at it, paganism wasn't persecuted in the Byzantine Empire. It just wasn't. Who did they go after? Who did the church go after at times? The Novatians. The Arians went after the Catholics brutally. They were racing towards Hippo to try to kill Augustine, but he had already died. He died a few days before they got to the city. And they were ransacking the churches, calling the people heretics and taking them over. But yeah, it's very funny. And yet they'll say that, if you want to get to what's called magic and rituals and spells, this comes from folk Catholicism in the Dark Ages and in the Middle Ages. right in Bibles and in prayer books. You'll see spells and incantations. And looking from the outside, what is liturgy and exorcisms and prayers and interventions? There's spells and incantations. What happens when we bless water and do all this kind of stuff? They wound up imagining that that's what happened with the pagans. The pagans didn't have things like that. They had the superstructure of the religion, the state, and the king, which really functioned as the government. There wasn't like in Europe where you had the church, which was always separate from the state, even if the Pope was over the king. You still had the kings and the dukes and the knights and stuff like that, which had to adhere to certain things, but were ultimately separate. The Egyptian religion was purely functional. So was the Babylonian. So was the Sumerian, and the Akkadian, and the Hittites. And when they went into other lands, they accepted the other gods as being gods of that land. So if you were actually a pagan, or if you actually believe in these ideas of the occult, the Theotokos was the Virgin Mary, the one that people have been praying to for 2,000 years, would have a hell of a lot of power and would be correct, because it would just be, the name wouldn't really matter. It's what's behind that, right? And you wouldn't reject Christ or the saints. This is why when the pagans came into Christianity, they accepted it. Oh yeah, we'll pray to their saints. And I mean, look at Armenia. There's still parts of Armenia where in churches they have the ancient Armenian gods right next to the saints. Why would they reject either of them? So the modern day occult is a very Protestant, evangelical, puritanical view. There's no way to get to actual paganism or Gnosticism or anything like that by going through occult works that came from a medieval puritanical and Catholic society, because it's a puritanical outlook. No, nothing can be Christian. Yet everything they run into, the Gnostics, the Rosicrucians, the Cathars didn't see themselves as, the Cathar meant the righteous. They saw themselves as the purest form of Christianity. Also known as the Albigensians, the Bogomils and the Paulicians, they called themselves Christians. And they thought that the Catholics and the Orthodox were the pagans. They didn't believe in the saints. It was just Christ and praying to Christ, and they didn't like, rituals or anything like this. Now, modern day occult is big on rituals. Well, there's really only one religion that in rituals, the transcendent, the divine, and the physical all come together. It's Christianity. It doesn't happen in Islam, not even in Hinduism or Buddhism. It's a misunderstanding of them. And the idea that the flesh is evil is a Gnostic idea, is a Docetic idea, is a Paulician idea, is a Bogomil idea, is an Albigensian or Cathar idea. That the flesh is evil, sex is bad, pregnancy is bad, marriage is bad. The fact that these things are good is seen as a Catholic or an Orthodox idea, and was seen by these Gnostic groups as being pagan. So the modern day occult can't even make up their own damn mind. And they don't even, as proved by Styx, Hex, and Hammer when he describes Gnosis, but he's describing either the monad or the pleroma. He doesn't even know anything about this. And you get these people, oh, you know so much. Just like when somebody spouts off a bunch of bullshit about the Council of Nicaea, if they talk with enough authority, people believe them, even though they haven't read a single damn thing. I don't know if Styx, Hex, and Hammer has even read any of the Nag Hammadi library or any of the Gnostic stuff or any of the patristic works. In fact, you find out more about the Gnostics reading the patristic works, and you have to realize they're slandering the Gnostics in many cases. Tertullian was a bastard. I love his writing. He was a rhetorician. He went out with vitriol against Marcion and accused him of a bunch of stuff that never happened. The Capocratians, they get accused of cannibalism, eating babies, drinking menstrual fluid, eating feces, drinking urine, and not believing in Christ, yet still calling themselves Christians. doesn't that kind of tell you that they were probably a very humble, righteous people who probably didn't listen to the bishops that were saying this stuff against them? That they did, in fact, believe in Christ and they didn't perform any of these insane things? All right, peace to you.